I see a couple of like feet walk up towards me, and as I'm doing like a slow tilt up the body, it's Christian Bale in the bat suit, and he's just got this look on his face like, "Get out of my way."
Welcome to Shoot the Shit, a podcast that tells the unfiltered tales of filmmakers' craziest production and on-set experiences.
Because every shit situation on set makes a great story after. I'm Taylor, a director and editor.
And I'm Kristen, also a director and editor and creative producer here at No Longer Network. And today we're talking with First AD, Jordan Paley. Welcome, Jordan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience in the industry so far as a First AD?
Sure. So I came up out of the Pittsburgh film scene. I started working in 2009, 2010. And pretty early on got involved with a bunch of big movies that were shooting out there. The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Dark Knight Rises, Second Unit on the Avengers. Came out to LA right after that and started working my way up through a lot of reality TV at the time and a lot of independent features. Took a little break from the industry, went to work at a TV network where I met Kristen. And then after leaving the TV network, came back to do pretty much full-time AD work since 2018.
I am such a Nolan fangirl, so I would love to hear about your experience on The Dark Knight Rises. Can we start there?
Sure. Well, so let me run through very early on. My experience was working on not just The Dark Knight Rises, but like I said, The Avengers. I worked on Perks of Being a Wallflower. I worked on reshoots for Star Trek, reshoots for Transformers, reshoots for The Force Awakens, and just had this very fortunate experience of bouncing from like big show to big show. With The Dark Knight Rises, it was a little bit nuts because I'd actually just moved to LA and was just not working. Finally booked a little bit of work, and a friend was like, "Do you want to come back and work on Magnus Rex?" I'm like, "What's Magnus Rex?" And they're like, I can't tell you." I'm like, "Is it Batman?" "It's Batman, isn't it?" And they're like, "I can't say it is Batman. I can't say it isn't Batman. Just come work on it. Trust me." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I was on a TV pilot, went up to the producer, said, "Hey guys, I'm leaving." And they're like, "What do you mean you're leaving? We got like 3 days left." And I'm like, I booked Batman. I'm going to go do Batman." Like, "Oh, you're going to do Batman? Good." So when I showed up on set my first day, it was massive. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I'd worked a lot of smaller jobs up to that, smaller features, but this was just, they basically took over the whole college area of Pittsburgh. So right by the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University. Basically, you couldn't walk anywhere without seeing the set. And we shot around this area for about a week. We shot the fight from the end of the movie. We shot one side in Pittsburgh. They shot the other side in New York. So when Batman and Bane are beating each other up, Batman's side is Pittsburgh, Bane's side is New York. They shot the breakout from the prison scene, which was really them breaking out of a college building, like an office building, basically. But they turned it into a prison.
I mean, some students might feel like they're in prison some days anyway, so
That's fair, yeah.
kind of fitting.
100%. And I mean, if the school looks like Gotham City, like it's not the prettiest place in the world. But my first day on set, I show up and I'm wandering around base camp. I know like 2 people on the movie, and one of the ADs is like, "Okay, just hang here." And I'm just kind of like looking at my feet, shuffling around. I see a couple of like feet walk up towards me, and as I'm doing like a slow tilt up the body, it's Christian Bale in the bat suit, and he's just like got this look on his face like, "Get out of my way. Get the fuck out of my way. I just want to keep moving." And all I saw was like Patrick Bateman, like ready to, and that was how I started working on Batman. That first day, it was wild. We were dealing with paparazzi that were trying to take set photos because they hadn't shown the look of Catwoman yet. So the guys from like Just Jared taking like set photos and trying to steal stuff. Call sheet leaked that day. Catwoman's stunt double rode the Bat Pod into an IMAX camera, breaking the IMAX camera, which I think there were like 8 in the world at that point, like one of the big 70mm ones. That's day one.
Wait, what did she ride into it? Yeah.
So
tell us more about how this happened.
So the stunt was Catwoman's double comes out of the building on the Bat Pod, the motorcycle, and it's supposed to just roll
Okay.
down the stairs, past the people fighting, and go past the camera. But instead, because this tire is like 8 feet wide and like uh, it's a staircase, she went like this, and right into the camera. And
Oh.
luckily, nobody was injured. Everybody was okay. But like, you start the day by destroying this several $100,000 camera. It was
That's
fun.
yeah, that's bad. Was production just like halted at that point? Because was that like the primary camera and what?
Yeah, everyone just kind of stood around and went, what now? You can actually see video of this on YouTube. There's video of it happening from like spy set photo stuff.
Wow.
And it's, it doesn't sound, it doesn't look as bad as it actually was, but really, like, we had to stop and figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, that's I mean that's a pretty major whoopsie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, an IMAX camera for sure. I mean, to be
yeah.
fair, they're giant cameras. They do get in the way. So,
They're huge. Yeah, if again, if you look at the footage of this thing happening, like, this is a beefy camera. It's basically the size of like a suitcase, like a big suitcase that you would have to check on an airplane. Like, that's the camera size. And like the
Wow.
magazines, just super heavy.
So Jordan, you had mentioned that you had also worked on this scene where they blew up the stadium. So would love to hear some details about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was sadly my last day in the movie, because I had to go back to LA and start a new gig out here. But yeah, my we basically had an army of PAs this day. It was no joke, about 45 people just helping production out, where it's normally 15, 20. But that's because we brought in like 10,000 extras to Heinz Field in Pittsburgh, or whatever it's called now, the stupid new name. But basically, people were brought in by the busload and ushered into the stadium as like volunteers. Everybody in the crowd, for the most part, for this scene was volunteer. And it was a summer day in Pittsburgh. It was the beginning of August, so we had all these extras dress up like it was wintertime in Gotham, wearing all these winter coats and blah blah blah. But no, it's like 95 degrees, 100 degrees in Pittsburgh, and everyone's sweating and there for free. But so a lot of the PAs got like
That's
distributed within
dedication.
dedication. You can see Batman and maybe win a TV. Uh, so what wound up happening was, I was designated as the PA system production assistant. So my job all day was to run like the God mic out to the first AD Nilo, so he can address the crowd, tell them what was going on, etc. But while this was happening, I also had to run the mic to Chris Nolan, and I had to interact with all the Pittsburgh Steelers and the mayor of Pittsburgh, and so it was just like a wild dream come true kind of day. Not a shit show, luckily. It all went pretty smoothly, but it was crazy. Like, we started the day with Heinz Ward from the Steelers riding the Batmobile around the stadium and just showboating. Once we actually started filming, we shot the scene a couple of different ways. We shot all of the regular football gameplay first, with the mayor of Pittsburgh kicking the ball to the Steelers, basically the Gotham Rogues in the movie. They run it downfield, and then cut, and then we set up for the explosion portion. The way they did this was they built basically fake pieces of field from the 50-yard line down to the end zone, and they were all rigged for explosives. They did this a couple of ways with a camera car following Heinz Ward as he ran the ball, or just doing his point of view of the field exploding, so we could do the like a background plate. But it was great. We spent a whole day just blowing up a football stadium. Um, it was great, super fun day.
So was there a fake field on top of the actual field that you guys were blowing up that fake layer on top?
Yeah, so the way that they did this was they had the real field out, and then they built platforms basically of fake field that were at an angle, so to the camera it looked like they were part of the regular field. But then as the camera would pass by, they could explode, that could explode, and that could explode, and wasn't causing any actual damage to the main field. But then they added VFX on top of that so that they can like have the half of the field where everybody was playing kind of crater to be a giant crater. Uh, to just be this big empty hole in the field where everybody once was. And so that was most of the day. Then they did the piece with Tom Hardy with the little kid singing the national anthem, and where he has the scientist guy hostage, and uh, for whenever they needed the crowd to react, they had his mic live in the stadium. And then for whenever it was plot details, they muted the mic in the stadium, and it was just captured for the movie. Um, Not that that mattered because they wound up, redubbing his voice in post production anyway. But you know,
Okay. That is such an epic scene. It had to be something to be there for the filming of it.
it was so cool. There's like people weren't supposed to sneak photos or video, but there's a bunch of fan video out there of like what the day was like. Somebody cut together like a reel from like all the way up in like the 300 400 section of the stadium. It was great. It was a good time.
Oh, I bet there's always going to be someone who's going to whip out their camera.
Yeah.
I love that the day that you guys were scheduled to blow something up, everything went super smooth. It's the juxtaposition of that situation of when you're organizing something to just explode, it goes just as you planned. It doesn't always
Yeah.
seem to be that way on set, and I'd love to hear stories about when things actually did explode within the technical side of things. I think you mentioned that you had to deal with a rather rowdy actor, and I know that's probably something you do often as an AD, but this was a particular case, it sounds like.
Sure. I was the second AD on a movie. I've only done one movie in this location, so I'm going to be very non-specific about where it is. But we were in a town kind of in the middle of nowhere, and the lead actor not only had a drinking problem, but had a little bit of a substance abuse problem in general. He was a big fan of cocaine. And so we'd be filming, and every now and then he would just leave set, and he'd be like, "I'm going to an ATM. I'm going to an ATM." It's like 2:30 in the morning, and we're like, "What ATM are you going to, my guy?" But no, he was going out to buy drugs. We were shooting a scene in like an auto body shop, and it was an actual working auto body shop, but we were shooting there after hours. But it had the most disgusting bathroom I'd ever seen in my life, and we found him doing cocaine off of one of the toilets in this dirty, 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 you know, uh, yeah, yeah. The face is correct. Just this filthy, filthy bathroom.
Oh,
Yeah. Um,
that's
uh,
awful. Was he embarrassed that you guys caught him doing this?
no, no, because he didn't. He thought he was hiding it. He thought he was being clever. At no point did he ever show any shame for this. But there were also days like later in the shoot where he would be sipping on like Jack Daniels or on like bourbon, and then would have to go and do like fight work. And they threw me in the movie to just be like a guy who gets like put in a headlock by this dude, and I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that scene. Like not the state he is in. This night actually. So this particular night, we were shooting. It was like a mobster kind of movie, and we were shooting a big scene where he confronts one of the other big mobster kind of guys. And I was like thrown in as a henchman, but he was so drunk before we even started filming that like he was incoherent in the scenes. And the same night, he also sexually harassed the makeup artist on the film, and so her boyfriend
Ay, ay,
came from 2 states away to come pick her up. But then when he showed up, demanded that he confront the actor. uh, and so we all not
what a
now we
boyfriend
not
who
only
flew
had to deal
in
with
to
this
stand up
problem
for her.
actor being terrible to people on
That's pretty
set,
cool.
while also he's fighting people while drunk and high. But also now there's this new opponent that enters the game and like comes up from a few states over to fight this dude. So that day went well. Our makeup artist went
Did they
home.
actually get into an altercation?
This was early days of COVID, so we were being very, very strict about how people got into the building. Luckily, we were filming in like an
Yeah.
office building where you need a key card to use the elevator, so dude couldn't even get up. But we went down. We put him at ease. We made sure that she was feeling okay and taken care of. Um, we sent her home full pay, just like apologies all around. Um, I one lesson I learned from this movie was when to walk away, and I should have walked from that movie, and I didn't, and I had regrets all the way up until the last night of filming, which lasted 17 hours. This movie
It's a long day.
also is a long day. This movie also fired the line producer on day three because nobody had any sense of where the budget was, and because she was confrontational and generally not good at her job. Um, so when she was taken off the project, we now had this new problem of nobody knew what the budget looked like, and we didn't know if we had enough money to finish the movie already on day three of a, I think it was a 20-day shoot. And so we just kept working. We hired a new line producer. We just kept working until somebody could definitively say, yes, you have enough money. No, you don't have enough money to finish this movie. The producers, though, called like a full crew meeting, being like, "Hey, we know everything's a little bit weird. We know everything's messed up, but uh, if we determine that we don't have enough money to finish, you guys will be paid out your entire rate for the whole show." So that was at least nice and respectful of them. But we just kept working. We just kept filming,
Just crossing your fingers that it was gonna all work out, and
hoping for the best
yeah.
constantly. I think I accidentally let one of the actors know we were in trouble, and so he helped raise a little bit more money to keep the movie going. Um, this movie was through and through a shit show. We were staying in like a mansion, like an that used to be a senior care home, and then had been abandoned. And they thought, oh, we'll rent it out to the film crew so they can all stay there and this and that. No Wi-Fi, no heat in winter, holes in the ground. Like for I guess it was for steam ventilation at one point, but they didn't have an active steam system running in the place. Anyway, this thing got condemned like 3 days before we were supposed to wrap. Just woke up to all these condemned notices on the door, and we're just like, well, what are we doing? So I packed my bags. I was ready to just get out of there.
I bet it sounds miserable.
Yeah. I know that movie
So,
has screened, but I don't think it's come out yet. And this was, 3 years ago at this point.
so question marks if it ever will, or
Yeah, I know it's
TBD.
got a distributor, TBD. I know that, like, I know they did the screening. I know it's got a distributor. I know this director has had other movies come out. I know the producers are working on other movies. So it seems like they made it. It's done. It's just kind of on the shelf, waiting for the right moment, whatever that may be.
I want to talk a little bit more about this actor that was, drunk and high. I mean, how was he able to deliver his performance? Like, how are you guys handling it as a crew?
Yeah, I mean, largely he was able to get through the day. He was there was only one or two times where another actor was like, I can't work with this guy right now. Um, and ironically, one of those people was the person that raised the rest of the money to finish the movie. But he's just like, look, I know the scene needs to happen for the movie, but I can't film a fight scene with this guy in the state he's in. It's not safe for anybody. We're like, absolutely not. We're not shooting that tonight. Don't worry about it. So I'm sure that they had to do some creative editing in the end because I don't think we shot everything that was scripted. I'm sure they came back for like another smaller unit to do a couple of pickup days or something, but that wasn't something I was involved in.
How often have you encountered that where an actor's behavior or sort of issues kind of holds up the production like that?
To that degree, not frequently, maybe once every year or two. But there are. I work on all kinds of movies. I work on a lot of like Christmas movies that it's the same company churns out the same type of movie frequently. I've done a lot of like lower budget Lifetime movies that like just 12 days, you're in, you're out, you crank them out, and everybody knows exactly what they're making. Um, uh, it's usually on the smaller the set, the bigger the problems. Uh, Obviously, I feel like that's just a given. Um, but it's usually on these smaller projects where we encounter the actors that are the bigger issues. Like anytime I've worked on a movie with, uh, we'll say like recognizable name talent, they've been very chill and very cool. But it's usually if somebody was a big deal 20 years ago, it's just a nightmare.
That's so
That makes
interesting.
sense.
Yeah, like that
Yeah.
dynamic would cause this drama on set. Do you think it's just like egos get in the way, or do you think it might be because maybe if you're working on a smaller production that the budget isn't quite there for their expectations of the treatment that they're going to get on set? Is it a combination of those? What do you think?
I think it's definitely a combination of the two. My mentor did a movie with Burt Reynolds in the mid '90s, like before Boogie Nights. And they wound up getting into a physical altercation on the set, and Burt came to apologize to him afterwards, and he's like, "Imagine being the biggest movie star of the world in the world, and then all of a sudden you're not." And he was doing these smaller direct to video kind of movies at the time, and wasn't Burt Reynolds anymore. He was an actor. So I think having like that kind of a dramatic change in lifestyle and change in quality of projects that you're doing. Not to say that my mentor's movie is bad because it's not, but having that dramatic shift from what things once were to what things are now, change is hard for anybody, especially if you've been told for so long that you're great, you're great, you're great, and then you know.
Nobody
But
says it
also, I
anymore.
mean,
Yeah.
I think also movies with just a little bit of money in the budget to throw money at problems is always going to turn out a little bit smoother. That said, behind the scenes,
Of
like it's
course.
probably going to be a little bit crazier because people are going to be frantically trying to solve the problems um, that you need to throw last minute money at. But largely, if you have the money to fix it, in general, things go smoother.
That makes sense.
That does, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So, speaking about problems and speaking about maybe not being able to throw money at this problem, you mentioned that you were on set where an actor was in grave danger. But
Yeah,
can you tell us a little bit more about that?
sure. So this was early in my career. I was still very much learning. It was like right after I moved to LA, and a buddy called me up to go do an industrial video in up in Idlewild. And so the plan was to shoot for 3 days and I think it was for. We didn't finish the commercial, so I don't remember. I think it was for some kind of like medicine. But we got up there and we went to go to the location that we were going to shoot in, and this one of our actors comes up and he's like, "Oh, this is beautiful." He seems super eager, super ready, and the action for this shot is just very simply just walks from point A to point B, goes back, does it a different way, we move on. But one take, I think we got like two or three takes in. He walks and he gets to his point, and we're like, okay, reset, 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 and he's just not moving. And we're like, what's going on? And then we get around in front of him, and his eyes are bulging out of his face, and it looks like he's gasping for air, and he collapses. And it turned out he was in the middle of having a massive heart attack. Um,
no.
and and so, like I said, we were up in Idlewild, California. So we were up a mountain. So we were about 45 minutes away from the nearest hospital. Um, and because we weren't doing anything dangerous, it was nothing like that. We didn't have like an ambulance on standby or anything. So it was either we drive this man who's under cardiac arrest to a hospital, or we wait 45 minutes for an ambulance. And unfortunately, it was the latter. We called 911 immediately, and they said, just keep him comfortable. Our DP uh, knew CPR and was just trying to keep him alive, basically. Um, my understanding is that by the time the ambulance got there, he had died twice, and we resuscitated him both times. And then on the way to the
Wow.
hospital, he had died one other time, and they were able to keep him alive uh, in the ambulance. So he died three times. When he got to the hospital, he was in a coma, I think for about a week. And then when he woke up, he was missing 6 months of his memory.
Oh my God.
But he's okay. He's alive.
That is wild. That's
Yeah.
that's out of the blue happened mid shooting.
Yeah. It turned
But you
out
said the
he
DP basically saved his life.
the DP knew CPR and kept him alive for 45 minutes while we waited for an ambulance. But it turns out he had a heart condition he didn't know about. This was all super sudden to everybody. So he was fine one minute, and then the next he was on the ground.
That's
But
incredible. What a way
yeah,
to find out.
yeah.
And you were working
So
as an AD on this?
I was either an AD or a PA. It was such a small crew. This was maybe like a 10-person crew kind of thing. So nothing super big at all. But I was either ADing or PAing or something, because who remembers? But they said, well, I guess the commercial's done. You guys can go home. We'll pay you for the full 3 days. And sorry this happened.
Damn.
Did the
Yeah,
commercial ever get finished?
I have no idea. Not with me. My assumption is that something like that happens. You kind of just they're like, we'll wait. They probably,
Yeah.
I'm sure they recast and they figured out a way to keep going. But I mean, I know the money
Sure.
was spent at that point.
Right.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, working on such a small set, whether you are a PA or an AD, but I think a lot of the times as an AD, you feel so much responsibility for people's welfare and well being and their safety. Have you been in other situations where you kind of felt like you had this responsibility to uphold that?
yeah. So I was on a movie. We'll say in the past 3 years during the pandemic. And because I'm going to be extra vague about this one, just because I still work with some of these people, and I don't know. I have not talked to the production since incident happened. Um, Long story short, we went to an area we had not. We were doing a movie in Northern California, and we came down to do a few days in SoCal. And we went to an area that had never been scouted, and we're using a piece of equipment that we'd never used before, and that was missing a part, so they had to go 2 hours back to LA to get it and come back. So we started this day 4 hours behind schedule, and we were going to be doing stunt work. But what had happened was I'd caught up with them doing the stunt. Uh, Long story short, it was. I'm trying to figure out how to be super vague while still specific enough that I don't sound like I'm talking nonsense. Um, we were doing motorcycle work, but we had discussed filming on one specific area of the location. Um, there was not enough space in the vehicle for me to go along, and because we had moving vehicles, we wanted to have as few objects in the area as possible. So they went out, they did the one path, they did the other path, and thinking they would come back after that, I was like, this is fine, I could see them. But no, they went off. They went off, and they went off our property. They went off the area we were permitted to film in. And when I caught out to them, they were doing stuff well beyond the scope of what we had discussed. And granted, it's stuff that they do normally. it's not anything super super crazy in the grand scheme of things. But had somebody fallen and hurt themselves, again, another location that was 45 minutes from the nearest hospital, no ambulance was booked because we never discussed the scope of what was going on. We had a paramedic, but the most they could do is, like, if somebody had hit their head um, and needed real medical attention, there's a fair chance that one, they would not have made it to a hospital. Two, for certain, we would not have been covered by insurance because they were outside of the permitted area that we were allowed to film in. Um, and three, it was in a time where, as a first AD, I was very conscious of the reputation of a first AD on set, because it was close to the Rust filming. And so my immediate thought was not only, if something happens to these people, I'll never be okay about it, but also, if something happens here, I'm not going to work again as a first AD. So I asked them to stop filming. I asked them to shut it down, and they went for another take. And the only reason they stopped was the site rep pulled his truck into the path of the motorcycles. And then they went back to base camp. But I walked to the producer and said, "Thank you for a challenging few months. I can no longer be on the set. I won't be here after lunch." And it was imperative that I make sure that my name is not on something that's putting people in danger. It's, even if it's something that they're comfortable doing, if it's something that the first AD is not comfortable doing, that's a conversation that needs to happen. If an AD says stop, you need to stop, because they're the ones responsible for set safety. But that was maybe the most one, that was the most emotionally challenging day I've had on set, was having to walk away from this movie that I put so much time into and so much hard work, and with people that I thought I was going to be furthering a relationship with, and doing other projects with in the future. It's ultimately the AD is responsible for set safety, though. If they say stop, you got to stop. You got to have the conversation.
And that's where
I
you
think
really
it's,
drew the line that day.
yeah, a literal line in the sand, because we were in the desert.
Well, I think that's an important point to make. I know that on this podcast, we really like to talk about some crazy fun things that, maybe tend to be something you're more inclined to smirk at. But I think it's so important to shed light on how important onset safety is, and why all of these protocols and things exist, is because, quite literally, it's to save people's lives. I mean, even in film school, one of the first things that they told us was, like, no stunts. You can't do stunts. And of course, like, you enter film school and you know nothing about filmmaking. And you're like, what do you mean I can't do stunts? Like, that's all I want to do is make cool shit. And then they tell you the story about a kid who had prop guns, and they didn't have a permit or whatever their, this discrepancy was. And the cops roll up because they get a report, and they think these guns are real, and this kid is, acting, and apparently doing it well, because they think that he's actually, terrorizing or whatever, and he's got weapons on him, so they ended up killing him. So
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
yeah, so, like, this is real shit. And yeah, again, like, the example of the Rust set, prime example of there being discrepancies and negligence on set, and sadly ending someone's life, and then putting other people's reputation on the line. So yeah, it's really important that we do talk about this stuff. And it was good on you to, like, actually know that that was the boundary, regardless of whether this is, like, oh, these are common things that people do on set, but you knew where, lines were being crossed, and you knew exactly what you needed to do about it. So I commend you for that, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for sharing your experiences. Is there anything you wanted to share with us about what you're working on right now, and where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Jordan Paley on basically all social media. Right now, we're prepping a feature that's going to shoot in upstate New York in April and May of 2024. We're in the financing stage, but we're starting to sign contracts on locations and reach out to actors as soon as our interim agreement gets approved. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, that's me. Come find me at Jordan Paley, Paley.
That's it for Shoot the Shit. Thanks for joining us.
Join us for the next shit show.
Subscribe here for the full version of this episode.
And remember, if it gets tough on set, it will make for a great story.
No Longer Network.